Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Episode 6, the final installment of our analysis of this amazing remnant of early American penology. We left off last time with this commentary on the link between the prison as a laboratory for surveillance studies and how that extends into the modern and postmodern society. So if you missed that, you might want to back up to the previous episode so that you can understand those links and those associations. But let's continue. Yes, the famous escape of 1945. This is really interesting. Let us zoom into the frame. As you can see, off to the right, it's an illustration of how elaborate this escape was designed, planned, and executed. Prison plaster worker Clarence Kleindienst spent about a year digging a tunnel out of cell number 68 to your right. He was serving a 5.5 to 11 year sentence for burglary, larceny, and forgery. The tunnel's entrance is now exposed inside the cell following an archaeological investigation in 2006. The escape was planned by Kleindienst and his cellmate, William Russell. They dug into the wall of their cell 15 feet down, 97 feet under the courtyard, and 15 feet up to freedom. They equipped the tunnel with lights and shored it with wood bracing. By April 3rd, 1945, the tunnel was complete. 10 inmates joined the escape on their way to breakfast that morning. One of the latecomers was flamboyant bank robber, escape artist Slick Willie Sutton. The 12 inmates emerged from the tunnel at the corner of 22nd Street and Fairmont Avenue and scattered into their neighborhood. Sutton was captured minutes later, 2 blocks from the penitentiary. He later claimed public credit for the tunnel's design and construction. Kleindienst was out for 3 hours. An additional 3 to 6 years were later added to his sentence. Russell was captured and seriously injured 6 days later after the escapee walked into a police trap at the home of his former girlfriend. James Grace returned to the penitentiary on the 11th of April, rang the doorbell, and asked to be back in. He was hungry. All the escaped inmates were eventually recaptured. The prison staff filled the tunnel with ash from the prison incinerator. And this is the ruse. That's the illusion that this was a laundry basket, a metal laundry container. And it just went completely from this cell block under the institution and out to Fairmont Avenue and Freedom. And there they are if you want to see photographs off to the right. Very interesting narrative about escape. We'll talk about escape in general and a little bit further down the line. That's where the tunnel is. Willie Sutton, the famous Slick Willie Sutton, known for arguably one of the most memorable quotes in crime reporting. A journalist asked him, "Mr. Sutton, why do you rob banks?" And he said, "That's where the money is." Say no more. Here's the line. There you go. This is allowing visitors to navigate, to orient themselves in the direction of the tunnel, to imagine the tunnel beneath them. Here's additional navigation. And this gives us an idea that women were also confined to Eastern State. Immigrant women, women of color, You see the processing card, the intake. She was convicted of murder, an immigrant woman from Germany. Some of them actually were allowed to keep young children with them. Now let's gaze at this image. We're inside Eastern State, and this is a recreation of one of the most sought-after cells in Eastern State Penitentiary. Visitors flock to this site to get a glimpse at the cell of Al Capone. Al Capone and his bodyguard were traveling from New York through Philadelphia, where they were stopped, searched, and arrested for firearms possession. Al Capone is sentenced to Eastern State. This recreation demonstrates that he had enormous influence over the prison administration and the guards, who provided fine furnishings: lamp, a phonograph, a bureau, a desk, furniture, paintings, a Persian rug. Al Capone. It's also been theorized that he may have set up his own arrest because he was incarcerated during the famous Chicago massacres, the St. Valentine's massacres, where they were going after crime bosses. There was a gangland war. That's been theorized. Curators at Eastern State also have reflected and reconsidered the extent to which Al Capone's cell was recreated. Perhaps it wasn't quite as elaborate as this. That's an ongoing examination among the curators at Eastern State. But nevertheless, this is very worthwhile. What we're looking at is a postcard to demonstrate that this has been commercialized for penal tourism. As I mentioned in a previous episode, artists are invited into Eastern State to contribute to a range of exhibitions. And here we have a cage. This is a replication of a cage from Guantanamo Bay, the global war on terror. And William Cromar adds some narrative to this installation. The cell is a recreation of a cell from Camp X-Ray, the now abandoned holding facility in U.S. Penitentiary at Guantanamo Bay. The Defense Department replaced Camp X-Ray with a newer facility called Camp Delta in 2012. As of 2006, the United States held more than 235 enemy combatants at the newer Guantanamo Bay facility. Most are accused of associating with the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. But this is really revealing. Placing Guantanamo Bay cell by placing Guantanamo Bay cell inside an Eastern State Penitentiary cell, Mr. Cromar illustrates the nearly polar opposite means used to find a nearly equivalent end. Where the Eastern State cell is massive, opaque, and stone, the small Guantanamo Bay cell is virtually transparent, reflecting a different attitude toward the prisoner and different expectations of architecture. And here we have Eastern State, another aerial view, the facade on Fairmount Avenue from the 1950s. And here we see the neo-Gothic facade at the entrance of Eastern State. Another postcard. This is what Eastern State looks like in the evening. Boutique lighting gives it a jewel-like quality. Obviously, they didn't use this kind of lighting when it was operating as a penitentiary. This is for tourism. This is to attract visitors. Escape to prison, penal tourism. Escape to prison. This book is brought to you by the good folks at University of California Press. You can read about the general thrust of this book on penal tourism, featuring Eastern State Penitentiary, Alcatraz, as well as prison museums in South Africa, Argentina, Hong Kong, and Australia. Penal tourism, Eastern State. Once again, the cover photograph from Eastern State, Philadelphia. It is with that we conclude these episodes of Eastern State. Thanks for listening. We've got more coming. Stay tuned.